Now have the white line by their side, as you see with Gasly in P9, and Haas back to a grey, denoting their livery for this year. So some subtle changes there to help you through the season, to denote where your faves are for the season.
For Gasly and Albon, I mean, and the whole team, Red Bull and AlphaTauri, this is really painful because they've lost so much running.
Yeah.
2.5 hours. And they've just done an install. You'd think you'd love to find these things after a few days off before your car starts running. They've obviously just gone out for the install lap at the start of the day and realised, both of them pretty much simultaneously, that their cars aren't working. The leaky pipe, as Ted was describing at AlphaTauri, that would generally be a PU issue.
Galling, isn't it?
Apparently not. But yeah, it's just galling for them to be out after having a few days off to try and get the car in perfect nick to send out again after so few reliability issues last week. Now just on the sidelines.
Had a question in earlier, hashtag F1 inbox. Is there a curfew in place during testing?
Nope.
No, there's not.
That is even worse than that. Is a day shift and a night shift as well. It's absolutely flat out, and there's new parts coming in the whole time from the factories and stuff that they fit overnight to try and get ready for the next morning. The two crews, so you have standardly in the garage, let's say for Latifi that we're on board with now, his mechanics might be working day shift. Russell's mechanics this week will be working night shift because there's only one car and there's so much they've got to prep and take to pieces at the end of the day and put together for the next. So it's absolutely flat out, and they'll rotate from week 1 to week 2. So if Latifi's mechanics are working days this week, it probably means they were working nights last week.
Because back in the old days we had test crews. As you say, none of that now. One side of the garage takes one shift, one side of the garage takes the other shift. Or some of them actually sort of combine the two, so you'll have elements of one side of the garage, elements of the other side of the garage, and mesh them together, mix and match for the 2 weeks. But yeah, who did the day shift in week 1 tends to do the night shift in week 2. And when we say night shift, it's a proper night shift. They'll come in as everyone's about to leave. They'll work through the night, and it's about this time that they'll be getting into bed and going to sleep.
Yeah, you turn up for your day of work at 7:30, 8 o'clock, and there's so many bleary-eyed people that have just the other side of the garage has just been working from. They turn up normally just before 6 o'clock, so they can do an overlap, sort of half an hour, see where the car's at, see for the engineers as well sometimes, just to see other bits and bobs in the data and the analysis. That will then go through the night and get ready for the next morning, where you've just had your nice peaceful rest.
It's back to earth with a thump, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kubica out on track in the Alfa Romeo. This will be his last half a day of the test. P6 at the moment on the C3. Nothing to report really with his lap so far. All looked fairly tidy. Little spin at the start of the session for him. Alfa Romeo really one of the big unknowns after the first 3 and a bit days of testing.
And yet they've had a lap on the C5 with Kimi Raikkonen going pretty quickly.
Yes.
The question is, how much of a quali sim was that, and how much of a quali sim has anyone else done? The lap time was quick. It was the third quickest. He was the best behind the 2 Mercedes.
Yes, he was.
So on paper it looks good, but still people are looking at their long runs and thinking maybe not so strong over the long runs, and potentially for Kimi and Antonio Giovinazzi, maybe they were just flattering themselves slightly with their low fuel.
And as you said earlier, if that was a quali run, a low fuel quali run, it was still 1.3 seconds off Mercedes.
I think they would take that right now.
Yeah, true.
Considering we think Mercedes are going to set the new benchmark, everyone's thinking Mercedes are going to be there. Red Bull potentially could challenge, but we've seen so little, and a day like today won't help them at all. But 1.3 seconds...
Yeah, you'd take it, wouldn't you?
That's going to put them, if you look at last year, put them right in the midfield. Valtteri Bottas was on pole here, I think, by 8/10 last year.
It was a walloping amount. I think was it 8? Was it actually 8/10? I thought it was like a half a second, but 8/10.
I think maybe it was half a second to Lewis and maybe 8/10 back to a Ferrari.
Okay, yeah, that sounds more likely. Oh, the doors are open at AlphaTauri. Okay, well, they clearly don't have to hide anything anymore, so that's positive. Hopefully we'll get Pierre Gasly out for some laps. The nose is going on. The AT01.
Very wide nose. on the AlphaTauri.
It is. It's aggressive as well. It bears a lot in common with that, with the Red Bull from last season.
Very different to the rest of their midfield competitors that have all gone for that skinny nose.
Yes.
The obviously the Racing Point, but also the Renault and the McLaren really focused in on the Mercedes slim nose. AlphaTauri going wider. Different approach.
Will Aston Martin continue with Red Bull next year? From Jay Schroff. No, Jay, they won't. That deal will come to an end, and Aston Martin will be solely Racing Point, based over at Silverstone. Some comments out of Otmar Safnauer yesterday saying that the staff members working at Red Bull at the moment on the Valkyrie project will transfer over to Silverstone and become part of that team. So Racing Point and Aston will become a fully fledged, proper outfit together. So that'll be very exciting.
That little chicane of Latifi there looked really horrible. Almost fighting the rear on the way in, and then just so much understeer for the left, so much understeer for the right, which forced him wide over that sausage curve. And understeer in that final chicane, you lose so much lap time. You want a nice front end to turn in the other way as well, and get on the gas on the exit.
Nice question, actually, given we've seen the Williams flying over the curbs from Controvi. Can someone tell me how much damage the curbs can do mechanically? In games, I hear a lot, try to avoid the curbs. We hear it a lot on a normal F1 weekend as well.
In
but
games?
How much impact does it really have? Yeah, like on F1 2018, 2019, oh, he's breaking down. Or is he? Is he just letting people by, or is he... No, he is. He's grinding to a halt. Not ideal. Second failure for Williams of the test out on track. And that's going to take some getting back.
Parked it slightly in the gravel as well there on the back straight. And that suddenly just came to a halt out of turn 9, really, didn't it? Didn't accelerate anymore.
He's stuck in fourth.
Yeah, still 4 on the dash.
Red flag, unsurprisingly. Claire Williams in the hat, and it was all going so well. But that's what testing's for. That is what testing's for. So let's see if we can figure out what happened with Latifi here. Let's have we're on board. Let's have a little listen. Yeah, he's stuck in fourth. And then it's just dead.
So he must have pulled the clutch in, and then he's just coasting. He's in a false neutral or something here. And the car's just turned off, basically, coming up towards turn 9.
And so this was coming through the final corner. That's not going to be hard enough to do any damage to the gearbox, is it?
That's back to the question that we were
how much damage can be done over the curbs?
But I don't think that curb should have done any significant damage. We've seen drivers go over there in the past, and you don't want if you ride the wheels up onto the curb, it's okay. If you go the other side of it, which Latifi actually just did there, you start to scrape the underneath of the car.
Just surfing down.
Yeah, and that's where you do more damage to the floor typically. But on a curb like that, you shouldn't be doing any further damage. The car's not really gone airborne off it. I've done a chassis on a curb before, and you don't even know anything about it in the car. You just sort of rumble over the curb, and next thing I know, the chassis in my old 2016 Renault was done. It was like it was made out of papier-mâché at the time.
Wow.
But the cars generally seem to be a lot stronger. You can just graze the floor of it. Maybe a front wing, if you hit it at a bad angle as well, can pick up a bit of damage.
There were those instances in Austria a few years ago of the suspension going over those very savage sawtooth curbs.
Exactly.
Well.
So that's the difference in curbing. The sausage curb there on the exit of the chicane, you're also at a lower speed when you hit it. You don't want to straddle it, because that's where you start bottoming out and do potential damage to more critical parts of the car, but particularly the floor, which is very key for aerodynamics. But yeah, the Austria ones were a big problem, because also that was when Daniel Kvyat in qualifying hit it coming through the penultimate corner, and you're arriving at such high speed there, a huge load on the tyres, the suspension absorbing a lot, and then getting a massive shock from the curbs as well and just folding.
I remember Sergio Perez in Hungary in the Force India as was, and I think his suspension went over the curbs at Hungary, and they're not all that bad, and the car ended up flipping because it went underneath the car and caught
an FP1
sent him out.
I remember that one.
Sent him upside down. Now I think Ted is standing by for us with an update down in the pit lane. So under red flag, let's take that chance to go and speak to Ted Kravitz.
Yeah, so the white recovery car of doom has just come down here to the Williams garage. The marshals come out here while the track car comes out in the garage. The mechanics come out with a sheet from the pits. The other mechanics in the garage prepare a dust sheet to cover up any part of the car that they don't want people seeing when the flatbed truck comes in. And everybody tries to figure out exactly what went wrong. Was it a gearbox problem? Was it something else? Was it curb damage? Well, they don't know as yet, or if they do, they're not telling us. All they're saying is that the car stopped on track, which we know as well. But it was nice to see Claire Williams on the pit wall. I think she should stay there. She should make this a permanent fixture. Anyway, we'll just I won't go and stick her for a question. I don't think it's fair. But she's asking Dave Redding. She's talking to Dave Redding, as you can see, or Otis, as he's called, the team manager at Williams, ex-McLaren, of course, and as to what's going on. Jack Aitken on the right-hand side. But they're not. I'm sure they do know, but they don't want to. They don't have a line for us. Let's put it that way, Will. They don't have a confirmed line for us as yet as to whether it was gearbox or anything else. So we'll respect that. It's only testing after all, and let them get about their business when Latifi comes back in. But the second red flag caused in in what, 6 days? Well, in the space of 6 days, 2 days,
Indeed.
2 days of testing. In any case, it's only testing. Have you got a Red Bull? Have you got a it's only testing klaxon up there?
Yes. There we go. There we go. And of course, Dave Redding nicknamed Otis. Why, Jolyon?
Otis Redding.
There you go.
He likes sitting on the dock of the bay.
I did.
Ted can't take us through. I thought he was going to take us through something. The Williams then getting lifted and taken back to the pits. Jolyon, you want to say something?
Yeah, so what's interesting here is that Williams will have known pretty much straight away what the cause, or what the initial cause was for the car turning off and Latifi coming to a halt, because they've got everyone looking at pretty much all the channels, hundreds and hundreds of channels of data on the car. But everyone's looking through the key ones with a microscope, and they would have seen, someone would have been in the back office just looking and saying, oh, we're losing pressure in some area.
The replay of last week. Now, did you see there was that little puff out the back of the car? There was something similar with Latifi's car, I'm pretty sure, as he was coming through the final sector.
That is a clear engine issue. But I was trying to see that through for Latifi. I wasn't sure if actually it was as he pulled over to the inside out of turn 9, whether he was just actually getting a bit offline and going over some dust that was left on the track where it's not been rubbed in. But the team should know immediately what the cause seems to be. But then it's just communicating it and figuring out what the line is, how long the fix is going to be before they dive straight into to what it is. Of course, they might know it's a hydraulic issue or whatever.
Well, he's been leaking fluid. You can see they're putting down so that could be. I mean, it could be that little puff could have been hydraulic.
I think it could well be a hydraulic issue for Latifi. That would mean he can't change gear as well.
Yeah.
And that seems to me the most likely explanation.
What seems interesting for me though is that if he had that little puff coming through the final few corners, and it finally let go down at turn 8. If he'd been losing hydraulic pressure, surely the team would have picked up on that before he got there. As we were saying, the reason we don't see, we were saying last week, the reason we don't see those catastrophic engine failures that we used to see with, you know, billowing smoke and flames pluming out the back of cars is because if an engine's about to total itself, all the alarms are going off and the driver will be told to pull over immediately and stop the car.
Yeah, you stop it. When you have a hydraulic failure, you lose functions of the car, everything that's powered by hydraulics. So your upshift, your downshift, your clutch, your power steering, you lose various functions over time. And normally you would know about it curb at the exit of turn 15. I'd be surprised if he could get all the way here without knowing something was up sooner. But then it does go. It seems fairly quickly. And then he's freewheeling in fourth gear in a sort of false neutral that the clutch is in just to allow him to freewheel, not lock everything up.
Now, we're watching from the back. I see that little bit of smoke coming out of the back of the car there. And that's it letting go. Interesting times. Yeah. So Williams with the promise, and as Lando Norris told us, certainly promising pace from Williams, but some little issues with reliability for them.
That looked a bit more dramatic that time there, coming into turn 9.
Yeah. Well, from that angle, you can actually see the gravity of it on board. You can hear it, but from the outside, it looks a bit worse.
Yeah. So either way, that's going to be lengthy for Williams to turn that around. George Russell meant to be in the car this afternoon. They've got an hour and 10 until lunch. Lunch is coming at a good time for them.
Yes.
The mechanics will have to work straight through it and try and get out as quickly as they can afterwards, but at least it's an hour where everyone's going to be out in the car and not lapping.
Lunch, I think, down at both Toro Rosso and Red Bull Racing could do with being pushed back by a few hours, because there are just 2 laps on the board for Gasly and no time, just the 1 recon lap at the start of the day for Alex Albon. If it is a suspension issue, it's taken them the better part of 3 hours to fix it. And if it was a small tube leakage at Alpha Tauri, again, it's taken an awful long time. But that is certainly the information that our Ted Kravitz was able to find out. Speaking of the devil, he's down at Williams.
Hello, I'm actually on. Annie Bradshaw, the team's press officer, has just come to talk to me, but I'm on, Annie. But you can tell me anyway if you want. Yes.
We're just waiting. Obviously, the car's not back yet.
Yes.
We're talking to HPP to make sure.
Okay.
There's no problem, but at the moment we don't know. But yeah, we're just waiting for the car to be back.
Okay.
So to see on the data.
Okay. Okay. Thanks very much. Thank you, Annie. Annie, just if you didn't hear that, she said we're waiting to get the car back, and they are looking at the data and what's going on. But she did mention HPP, which is, of course, the High Performance Powertrains Mercedes. So they're checking with Mercedes as to whether it might have been an engine issue. But I'm just thinking aloud. If it's another Mercedes issue, and we think the one last week was, although that was never actually confirmed by the team, was it?
True.
But it certainly looked that way, but not confirmed, Mercedes issue. But would Williams trade performance for reliability this season? And I think they kind of would. If they're fast, last year they were slow but reliable. And if they're fast this year but unreliable, I think they'd kind of take that this year, wouldn't they? Because you can always get on top of reliability, but you can't necessarily always make a slow car fast. Right, talking about making cars faster, I did promise you earlier a little look on the Alfa Romeo Sauber updates that we've seen fresh this morning. First of all, on the front wing, it's got much more of an oxbow-shaped main plane. It's a brand new front wing today for Giovinazzi, Kubica, and eventually Kimi Räikkönen. But as you know, Kubica in the car at the moment. So much more of a sort of profiled front wing, and then more of a beautifully sort of outwashed. You see the edge of the top flap, the top right flap as we're looking at it, beautifully twisted out towards, just to get that outwash effect around the outside of the front tyre. And then if you look at the nose, just around the number 88, which is of course Kubica's number, it's got some new little what what I call index finger flick-up horns. So called because they're like your index finger if you go like that. So if you look at them, it's actually a dual little flick-ups, little wings, just next to the number 88, whereas they were single last time round. But that is what's new down at Alfa Romeo Orlen Sauber. There you go, give its full name.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of work gone on that front wing, but still sticking with that core philosophy that they did last year, same as Ferrari, completely the opposite of where Mercedes led in terms of that outwash that proved so critical in car balance last season.
There's a stark contrast, isn't there, between the outwash approach of Ferrari and Alfa Romeo and
Simone Resta on the left there, sorry mate, who of course was a massive part of designing that Alfa Romeo last year, was seconded back to Ferrari midway through last season to help design the SF1000. Very much Ferrari and Alfa Romeo's go-to design there.
And Marc Genet, who's been at Ferrari forever,
donkey's years. Now that's going back in the day to when test drivers were one of, if not the most important member of the team. He used to pound around for Ferrari, putting the miles in. Did Marc Genet about the time when Alex Wirtz was doing the same at McLaren, and Pedro de la Rosa. And Frank Montagny, of course, at Renault, doing so much of the work in 05, 06. I remember Fernando Alonso saying he owed much of his championship success to the testing work that Montagny had put in 05 and 06. So there is the Williams on the back of the truck, and here is Latifi. Now this must be last week. Let's give it a listen.
I think it's this week, given how out of shape he was at the chicane.
Yeah, my apologies. Oh, he's clunking there. Maybe it was through that final corner then. So he's already clunking going down into turn 1.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good at all, does it? And he tried hard to get that back there, considering it already was sounding very unhealthy coming down into turn 1.
I think that little puff then that we saw at the rear before he hit the curb, maybe if it had started to go coming into 14, 15, spat him over the curbs a little bit, and then he's struggling from there.
Yeah, that might be the one actually why he's struggling so much through that chicane, is because already he's got a gremlin, and he's maybe not getting the engine braking he's expecting, and he's just washing understeer over the curb, and it's already actually going. And then a couple hundred metres later on the straight, it finally sounds awful.
We have a Red Bull on track. Alexander Albon for only his second tour of the day. And that is big news, with 1 hour and 5 minutes of the session left. Alex Albon is out on track. Will he put a lap in at the end of this, or will this just be a recon lap for him to come back in and just double check that everything that the team has been working on for nigh on 3 hours is... Oh, he's going straight for it.
Looks a bit skittish on the rear end coming through the final corners. I think low temps potentially, and looked like he was struggling to get the power down. Here we go though, first flying lap for Alex Albon. C2 tyres, and just a sighter for the day really. DRS shuts as he hits the brakes through turns 1 and 2.
Bit of flow vis on the inside of that rear wing element. You just see it kicking up from the Alfa Romeo logo on the back.
The Red Bull running really, really low as well. Look at the sparks through turn 3.
Yeah.
Probably low pressures as well, helping it run into the ground a little bit more than perhaps might be ideal, or maybe it is ideal for them.
He's taking up a lot of curb as well. He's having a proper push lap.
Yeah, well, he needs to get on with it really now. 1 hour and 5 minutes to go, so he's lost so much track time.
And Gasly's out on track as well. I mean, does it seem a little bit suspect that they're both out at exactly the same time for supposedly completely different issues that had hamstrung them for exactly the same amount of time?
Yeah. I mean, you can't get, it seems fishy to me. The two Honda Power cars go and do an install at the start of the day, then they're both out with a leaky pipe.
With a
and there's
leaky pipe and some
issues.
suspension that takes them 3 hours to fix, and they're both back out at exactly the same time.
And by the way, a PU change is about 3 hours maybe to fix as well.
Let's hear from Alex then. Let's get his words.
Good. I think we definitely made a big step forward with drivability, and especially each time we went out, it was getting better and better. So far so good. And then now just kind of chipping away at the setup as well, just trying to get the car a bit more together. That's the main thing. I think we're looking strong. I think Mercedes are looking strong as well. But yeah, I think compared to last year especially, it's a big step forward. So I think we've hit the floor running compared to last year. I think it was a bit of chasing. I mean, I'm speaking from someone who wasn't even here last year, but that's what they told me. So yeah, it's going well so far.
Interesting stuff then from Alex. That was at the end of last week, talking about the car and how he found it. There's Sergio Perez down in the Racing Point, but he can't wait to get back into that car. So Albon and Gasly on the timing sheets, then Albon a 1:18.8, Gasly a 1:19.1, so they are at least on the schedule.
Yep, and hopefully for them now they have untroubled rest of the day, and they can crack on -3 hours at the start of the day that's put them on the back foot. But at least there's been a couple of red flags, hasn't there? Because there was a red flag was there for Vettel's spin earlier on as well, to sweep the gravel off. So at least other people have had some stoppages. Hasn't stopped Lewis Hamilton too much as he leaves the pits to start lap 63.
Meanwhile, Robert Kubica, P6 at the moment, less than a second off the top time. Has just gone purple in sector 1. I wonder if Alpha, again, going for a little bit of a glory run. They were second quickest overall last week. Let's not forget, in relation to Mercedes. 1.3 seconds off the pace at the end of the test, but again on the C5 tyre. And he's quick in sector 2 as well, a 28.895. It's looking like a very good time for Robert Kubica as he comes through. It should be over the line and up to P4 for Bobby K, 1:18.230.
Some red tyres on, and so that will give him a bit more grip. Not sure if it was a C4 or a C5, but that was clearly a bit more of a qualifying spec run for Kubica. He's got an hour left of his running today. Or is he doing the full day?
No, I think he's just doing the morning, isn't he?
Oh no, Kimi's taking over for this afternoon. Yeah, so he's got an hour left and he's having a bit of a play.
Gasly stays in P9, but improves to a 1:18.974 lap, starting to get put in then with an hour left until lunch. Lewis Hamilton still at the top of your times, a 1:17.753. Lance Stroll, P2, very impressive from the Racing Point, 17.787, been looking good all day. Sebastian Vettel, a 1:18.113. Where did he pop that one in from? Was that around the time that
Hamilton started getting down to it fairly quickly?
Yeah, but he was hovering around because he was on a 1:73 for quite a while, because he wasn't quite where he had been last time out.